Hey everyone, welcome to my very first video. In this video, I will be remaking this 12 drawer Bassett dresser that I picked up from my local Goodwill. Now, interesting story about this one is I had picked up its 3 drawer bachelor chest from the same line through Bassett about 10 months ago. So I have refinished that one and I've had it up for sale for a little while, but because it's by itself, it hasn't been selling. Also, I think the color needs a refresh. So I will be redoing that alongside this dresser. So I always start off my pieces by cleaning outside and inside. I like to use simple green in a, diluted form. I buy the concentrated stuff from Home Depot, I believe. So as I go through and I clean the piece, I pull out every drawer and number the back. That way, when I reassemble everything, nothing is out of its place. I find all kinds of things as I move along. In this particular dresser, I knew the owner, I knew her address, her phone number, her social. So, yeah, that's always interesting. Um, I take out all of the hardware. I will not be reusing the Batwing hardware for this redo. I know, sad face. I probably will donate that to Goodwill. And I just keep going, cleaning, taking off hardware as I go along. After I removed all the drawers, I did use my Festool vacuum to clean the inside, and I also did wipe that down off camera. The next step I took was to strip back the top. Now, I knew what to expect because, again, I had done the bachelor chest before. I know that there is mahogany veneer under this really thick lacquer finish. So to strip it back, instead of just going immediately for my sander and risk damaging the veneer, I use lacquer thinner, which I pour in this little plastic cup, and triple-aught steel wool, which is just what I had on hand. To be honest, this finish was thick enough it would have withstood 2-aught steel wool. But I pour the lacquer thinner on. I try to scrape it off as much as I can with the steel wool. And when I have a good patch of it dislodged, I just go back with some paper towel and take back the excess. You want to work in small batches because the lacquer thinner does dry very fast, and then you're left with kind of a sticky, goopy mess. So keep that in mind. So I proceeded to strip back the entire top. I think this took me really hardly any time at all, maybe about 15 minutes, which to sand this would have taken a lot longer. Here I am all the way at the end of the dresser and just continue to get as much of that lacquer finish off as I possibly can. This is the second pass after I finished the first initial removal of the finish. I always like to go back with, again, the same lacquer thinner and some fresh steel wool and just knock back as much as those residual streaks of finish that are left. You want to try to get the surface as clean as possible before you actually move on to sanding. Some of you might be wondering, if we are going to sand anyway, why go to the trouble? You won't need to sand nearly as much if you've already gone through this process of stripping back the finish. Plus, it's a lot less risky to do it this way than just take really coarse grit sandpaper to your finish and risk burning through the veneer. I use the same procedure and materials to strip back the finish off of the edge of the dresser top. After I was done with stripping back the finish off of the edge, I went in with a variety of sanding tools to take any residual finish off. I hand sanded most of it, using a 120 and then 150 grit sandpaper. I also used some of my scraping tools that could get into some of those little deep grooves. And finally, I cleaned everything up using my Surf Prep sander with the abrasive foam pad attached as to protect some of the intricate curvatures in the design. Next, I moved on to sanding the top. I used my Surf Prep sander because I had already removed most of the finish through the lacquer stripping process. I started off with 120, did a second pass with 150, and then finished off with 180. I knew I wanted to gel stain this, so moving up to 180 was advisable. And here is the result after wiping down with some mineral spirit. Really beautiful mahogany veneer under that thick, dark finish. There was a small divot in the edge that I filled in with this Famo wood filler in the color walnut. And after I sanded that smooth, I proceeded to scuff sand the rest of the body of the dresser with a 150 grit to get it ready for primer. I knew the body of the dresser was going to be painted, and my intention was always to leave the top and drawer fronts stained. Of course, I wanted this in order to match the existing three drawer chest that I had already refinished. There were a couple of corrections I wanted to get done before I primed. There was this vertical gap between the front trim and the side panel piece that I wanted to fill in. So I did that just using some caulk, tried to push it in with my finger as much as possible and get the surface smooth. There was also this fairly large chunk missing off of the back piece of the trim that I used Bondo to reshape and sand smooth. I think I ended up doing two applications of Bondo, of course, sanding in between each to get a smooth and crisp corner off of this piece. Then I was finally ready for primer. I used the Bin Advanced Synthetic Shellac. I do not like this as much as the actual shellac. However, this keeps my paint sprayer a lot cleaner and it is just easier to rinse out since it is more of a water-based product. I am using my HomeRite Super Finish Max, and I do like to line it with these little clear plastic bags so I don't have the mess of cleaning out the container. I also strain all of my paint and primer and test it before I approach the piece. Here I am applying the first coat of primer. Doing a light initial coat, I know that there is going to be tan and bleed through, and I know there are also some corrections I do want to make. So this is not meant to be a perfect coat, just to highlight any imperfections. Here is what the situation looked like after the first coat of primer had dried, and I went in with Bondo glazing putty to fill in any sort of dips and cracks that became evident. You can also see quite a bit of tan and bleed through as I initially expected. So I let this glazing putty dry. I sanded everything as smooth as possible, and then I waited to recoat for a second time. And here's what the dresser looked like after the second coat of primer had dried. I was really pleased and happy with this, so I did not do any further coats. I then turned my attention to the drawers. So there are 12 drawers to deal with here, and I knew I wanted to strip back the finish and gel stain them to match the top. So I used the same process as I did to strip back the top of the dresser using that lacquer thinner and the triple aught steel wool. Proceeded to tape every drawer just to keep it as clean as possible because there are inevitable drips, and strip the front. When I got to this drawer, which was the middle drawer of the top row, I did know that there was a little bit of a faded spot that I had picked up on. Now, what was there was an initial like decorative emblem. And when I stripped the finish off, it really became evident that it was veneer burned through actually from the manufacturer. So you can kind of see a light spot there, which I knew I would have to color correct in the following steps. My next step was to very, very gently sand back the drawer fronts. This was the thinnest veneer I had ever seen. It was paper thin. So I believe I used a 220 grit to do this. I was very, very intentional and always sanding with the grain. After sanding was done, I was ready to apply the gel stain. I used Varathane gel stain in the color Dark Walnut. And this is the first drawer, the middle drawer on the top row. You can see the sand through mark right there. I wanted to do the gel stain application first. That way when I color matched that dull spot, it would color match the surrounding already gel stained area. Application's super easy with this. You just wipe it on and wipe it back. I did want to use the color Dark Walnut because I was trying to combat the red hues in the mahogany, which were pretty strong. I was just trying to get it to more of a chocolatey, rich color. You can see the burn through mark really clearly here. Burn through marks don't take stain like the surrounding veneered area does. And I proceeded to use that same gel stain on the rest of the drawers, again applying it liberally and wiping it back. You definitely don't want to let it start drying because it becomes pretty gummy and difficult to remove. I would just like to take a moment to remind you all to like, subscribe, and share. I am obviously a very new YouTube channel and need all the support I can get. Here's a look at the stain drawers. I think the dark walnut color stain was really a good move here. Really pretty veneer, came out looking very luxurious. So next, I am going to deal with that burn through mark. I used a variety of different tools to do this. Tried first with my Mohawk graining pens, and they were standing out too much. Next up, you can see it here. I tried with the Mohawk Blendall sticks, which are essentially like waxy crayons. Didn't like that. And then I have this kit that I ordered from Amazon, super affordable, with a bunch of different acrylic types of paints. And I used a variety of those to basically in paint. I start with the lightest surrounding color first because I can always add dark hues to it. It's very hard to start dark and transition to light. You can see here the direction of the grain is a diagonal direction. So I took that into consideration. As I was in painting, I often use my little fan shaped artist brush to give it the texture similar to the surroundings. So I just continued onward until I was relatively happy with the color. There is always going to be a little bit of a sheen difference since paint doesn't have wood grain, obviously, but I was really happy with the results. So you can maybe see the little escutcheon pinholes there, proving that this is that top drawer. I was really happy with the color matching that I did on this drawer. After that, we were ready for some paint. So I brought the 3-drawer chest out, taped the top because I was very happy with the way that top came out, and taped off the legs with just some brown paper. Gave it a quick little scuff sand, and it was ready for paint. I used Sherwin-Williams Emerald Trim Enamel paint in the color Inkwell to repaint this set. Loved this color. It is a very dark, moody blue-black. First time using this specific color, but I was really happy. So as it goes on the chest, you can definitely see it is quite a bit different than that bright navy that was on there. That color was a hard sell. So I decided, since I found the matching dresser, I would just go ahead and respray it to something a little bit more marketable. I used my Erlax 5700 by Wagner. I absolutely love this sprayer. It gives a super fine, buttery smooth finish every single time, whether you're spraying paint or top coat. I think I ended up doing 2 or 3 coats of paint. Next, I proceeded to lacquer the drawer fronts. I used Mohawk's pre-catalyzed lacquer in satin to do so. I love a lacquer finish. I really love the fact that it doesn't come across as plasticky at all, that some top coats sometimes do. It is super easy to apply. You definitely need your PPE, not only a respirator, but also lots and lots of ventilation. But you spray it on, thin coat, it dries very fast, and in a second here you're going to see that I go through and sand back just this very, very light sanding with, I think it was a 400 grit. Now what that does is it knocks back any sort of like dust particles or little, dust nibs that have accumulated, and it also powders down the lacquer finish. So the thing about lacquer is, as you layer it, the layers actually melt into each other. So if you don't have any big particles that you need to dust off, my understanding is that you can actually let the lacquer dust on there and it'll just provide a little bit more of a adhesion quality to the layer that you spray next. Here I am spraying the second coat. The process is the exact same as the first coat. You're going for a lighter coat, just kind of keeping in mind that the layers do start to amalgamate, just mix in with each other. I ended up doing 3 coats of lacquer, not sanding down the top coat. The other thing I really love about lacquer is that sanding between layers ensures that you get such a glassy, smooth finish. Now I am using a satin finish here, so I am not going for that super high gloss, but it's easy to achieve with lacquer. I much prefer it to top coat, aside from the fact that it does stink. Next, I finally uncovered the top of the dresser, getting it ready for its gel stain. Used the same gel stain as I did with the drawer fronts, of course. Applied it the same way, applied it liberally, and just wiped it back. The top took the stain a tad more so than the drawer fronts did, which I kind of expected already. The veneer on the drawer fronts was very thin, whereas the veneer on the top was quite a bit thicker. The final wipe back here before I show you guys what the top looked like just after the gel stain had dried. Love this color. Definitely cut back some of the red. There is some red that comes through, but that's just the nature of mahogany wood. Here's the progress so far. I was really loving the way the paint color turned out. The top was looking great. I used the same lacquer process as I did for the drawers on the top, except I think I did 4 coats on the top. Here are the handles that I picked. They are a copper finish, vintage vibe. Got them from Amazon. And finally, I wanted to add the feet, legs that I also got from Amazon. Same variety that I used on the chest. The ones I put on the dresser were an inch longer just to give it a little bit more height and to have it stand out. I used the same Varathane gel stain in dark walnut to stain the raw wood of the legs. Here's a reminder of where we started with this dresser. Typical 70s bat wing handles, very dirty piece, some water rings on the top, really red orange. And here is what it ended up looking like with the matching chest. I'm really pleased with the way this came out. I did line the drawers. I find that my buyers like that. They enjoy a nice clean drawer. I always sand the drawers, make sure that I give them a quick refresh. The paint color was fantastic. I will definitely be using this again. Thanks so much for watching to the end. Please like, subscribe, and share. It means the world to me.